Good morning. How is everybody? Good to see you, and thumbs up. It looks like all around. So we're in good shape. I'm Julie Vaness. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research, or FFAR, as we call it. And I am thrilled to welcome you to the 2023 Annual Public Conversation. And we do mean conversation. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Doug Buehler, the Vice Chair of FFAR's Board of Directors, who will provide an update. Then we'll have a video from USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack, who recorded it for today's event, just in case there might have been a government shutdown. After that, FFAR's Executive Director, Dr. Saharah Moon Chapotin, will provide remarks about what we've accomplished and our future priorities. We'll also hold the public comment session today and take questions from the crowd. Before we dive into the program, I want to note that this webinar is being recorded and all virtual participants' lines are muted. If you don't want to be recorded, you may leave the room now. FFAR has an amazing board. I'm joined today by two original FFAR board members, Dr. Doug Buehler and Dr. Mike Laddish. Doug is the Associate Vice President of the Office of Research and Innovation at Michigan State University, as well as the Vice Chair of the FFAR Board of Directors. Doug is a long-serving and active member of FFAR's board, and we're thrilled to have him here today. Dr. Mike Laddish is the Director of the Laboratory of Renewable Resources Engineering and a distinguished professor of agricultural and biological engineering at Purdue University. He is dedicated to FFAR as well and currently chairs the board's Scientific Programs Committee. And now I will turn the floor over to Doug.
Thank you, Sarah, and welcome, and thanks for all of you for coming. And I believe we have about 70 people online, so we really appreciate that turnout. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, let me welcome you to the 9th Public Conversation. As I said, it's wonderful to have you all here. Those of you who are not all that familiar with FFAR, just let me give you a little bit of background and history. Congress established FFAR in the 2014 Farm Bill to build public-private partnerships that fund bold research addressing food and agricultural challenges. That legislation originally provided $200 million to be matched by non-federal partners to fill knowledge gaps and to complement the USDA research agenda. Upon its creation, FFAR moved very quickly to put together the infrastructure and expertise to address its mission. And because of that early success, we were awarded an additional $185 million in the 2018 Farm Bill. Today, FFAR has become a pioneering leader in food and agriculture research. To date, FFAR has awarded 360 grants funded with over 550 partners. These awards and projects are across the United States and in 7 other countries. These grants invest $713 million into critical food and agriculture research. FFAR matches every federal dollar with at least $1 from non-federal sources. On average, the foundation garners $1.40 for every federal dollar that we have allocated, delivering a powerful return on our investment. As Julie mentioned, our board is a very important part of this organization. And this year, we had the pleasure of welcoming 6 new members to that board. That includes Joe Del Bosque, who is a lifelong farmer from California, Kyle Bridgeforth, who is a co-owner of the family row crop agribusiness in Alabama, David Donnan, who is an adjunct professor at Northwestern University, as well as an investor and mentor of entrepreneurs and startups in nutrition, food, and agricultural industries. Venkata Kishore, who is Vice President and Head of Smallholders and Sustainability for Vegetable Seeds at Bayer Crop Science. Donald Naruma, who is Senior Program Officer of Animal Nutrition at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Polly Ruland, who is the CEO of the United Soybean Board. We've also welcomed two new ex officio board members, that being Dr. Susan Marcuzzi, who is the Assistant Director of the Directorate of Biological Sciences at the National Science Foundation, and Dr. Manjeet Misra, who is the new Director of USDA's National Institute for Food and Agriculture. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge my colleagues on the board and would ask the board members who are present in the audience just to stand to be recognized. Thank you for everything you do for the foundation. At last year's public conversation, we were thrilled to introduce a new executive director, Dr. Saharah Moon Chapotin. 1 year later, she has much to report, and we're really excited about what she's brought to the foundation and her vision and her objectives for our research portfolio. But before I hand it over to Saharah Moon, there are a few highlights from the last year that I'd like to mention. The first is the Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, or AIM for Climate Summit. This is a joint initiative between the United States and United Arab Emirates that seeks to address climate change and global hunger by increasing investment in climate smart agriculture and food systems innovation. FAR supported the AIM for Climate Summit hosted by the USDA here in Washington, D.C. last May. The summit brought together over 1,100 global partners to discuss this important work. Our executive director, Dr. Chapotin, led a plenary session on the importance of agriculture climate research that included several FAR stakeholders and highlighted the important role of farmers in our work. The AIM for Climate Summit encourages collaboration through innovation called innovation sprints between non-government partners to co-invest in agricultural innovation and climate smart agricultural practices. Also during the summit, FAR was pleased to announce two new initiatives that we're involved with. First, FAR joined the Dairy Management Incorporated's Dairy Soil and Water Regeneration Project. We also welcomed and announced that the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office joined FAR's Efficient Fertilizer Consortium, say that 3 times fast. This consortium is developing and validating efficient, environmentally beneficial, and cost-effective fertilizers and management practices. FAR continues to welcome new partners to this program. So the summit was really an incredible opportunity for FAR to be exposed to and work with an important set of new stakeholders. And we're really excited about our interaction with the USDA, and we're really pleased to have the opportunity to support the summit. Secondly, FAR continues to receive strong support from congressional champions. In April, the board was thrilled to host a reception for these champions and congressional staff at the U.S. Botanic Gardens. Chairwoman of the Senate Agricultural Committee, Debbie Stabenow, Senator Mike Braun, and Congressman Jim Baird all spoke eloquently about FAR and the importance of what we do to increase agriculture research at the reception. We're also pleased to welcome several of our partners, including partners from McDonald's, the National Pork Board, and Bayer Crop Science. The reception did a wonderful job of highlighting the impact and amplifying our federal funds by helping these public-private partnerships and to reach their sustainability goals, as well as helping farmers combat current and future challenges. So FAR's really had an incredibly productive and exciting year, and I really believe that this is just the beginning. And so we're really looking forward to continue to build on our success and so that we can move forward and to be important players in this space. So as I mentioned, FAR was created to complement USDA's research agenda, and we have a very close relationship with USDA. And we're really proud of our efforts to convene the private sector and advance our food and agriculture research goals in partnership with USDA. So to further discuss the important partnership between FAR and USDA, it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Secretary Tom Vilsack, who has been kind enough to provide recorded remarks. Secretary Vilsack is the 32nd Secretary of Agriculture, and throughout his career, he has advocated for Americans' farmers and helped provide a safe, efficient, and nutritious food supply for American people and beyond. With that, please turn your attention to the screen for Secretary Tom Vilsack's remarks about the current challenges and opportunities for agricultural research. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to share a few remarks at the 2023 Board of Directors public conversation. I'm grateful for organizations like FFAR that advance the critical research our agricultural industry relies on every single day. That research is key as we address a number of agricultural challenges that impact farmers, ranchers, and rural communities every day. Most notable of these challenges is climate change, which is creating an unprecedented challenge for producers, exacerbating global food insecurity and threatening longstanding agricultural practices worldwide. We know that investment in climate-smart agriculture and food systems innovation will help create a surge of solutions, and these solutions will enable the world to meet nutritional needs, increase agricultural productivity, conserve nature and biodiversity, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and sequester carbon. Investment in agricultural research has long been a driver of prosperity and resilience, and it's never been more important as agriculture and food systems around the world face a host of challenges in the face of a changing climate. That's why the United States and the United Arab Emirates joined together to create the Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, or AIM for Climate. The goal of AIM for Climate is to increase and accelerate agriculture and food systems innovation in support of climate action. Earlier this year, as you know, the United States hosted the AIM for Climate Summit, and with the support of FFAR, brought together AIM for Climate partners from around the globe that are increasing investment in and support for climate-smart agriculture and food systems innovation. I want to thank you again for your support in this effort and for your efforts in the research sector. Right now, investments in agriculture R&D are critical to provide a pipeline of innovation that addresses current and future crises. That's why USDA has developed a strategy that drives our scientific priorities for the next 3 years, establishing a framework to transform the U.S. food system and to support our nation's farmers, ranchers, and producers and forested landowners. This cross-cutting strategy demonstrates how USDA science begins with innovation and moves across key priorities to address the obstacles we face in agriculture and to ensure that our research translates into real-world solutions that meet this moment. The strategy does not exist in a vacuum. So much of the research we do in the federal government is complemented and supplemented by your research. Your partnership is invaluable to us at USDA and to American agriculture. The collaboration between USDA and FFAR has been critically important to develop research that helps producers make the best choices for their operations, mitigates the impacts of climate change, and advances food security here at home and around the world. You're on the front lines of research that makes a difference in the lives of millions. I look forward to that research and to our partnership continuing into the future. Sincerely hope that you have a meaningful and productive meeting. And again, thank you for all that you do. And I look forward to the opportunity to connect in person very soon.
Thank you to Secretary Vilsack and his team for those wonderful remarks on the value of food and agriculture research and FFAR's continued partnership with USDA. We look forward to continuing and increasing this close working relationship. About a year ago, FFAR welcomed our new Executive Director, Dr. Saharah Moon Chapotin. Since then, she's hit the ground running, providing leadership, furthering our ability to track and promote impacts, updating FFAR's research strategy, and introducing a new vision to further FFAR's success. It's been a pleasure working with Saharah Moon this past year, and I am delighted to turn the floor over to her for an overview of what FFAR's accomplished and where we're heading.
Thank you, Julie. Sorry about that.
Yes. So I'm thrilled to be here today. Sorry for that slight interruption. Really pleased to have you all and to tell you a little bit about FFAR, about what we've been up to in the last year, and give you a sneak preview of our future directions in the form of our research strategy. FFAR's mission: we build unique partnerships to support innovative science, addressing today's food and agriculture challenges. Does this work if I'm back here, or do I need to be at the podium? I'm good back here, great. And our vision is that we envision a world in which the ever innovating and collaborative science provides every person access to the food they need that is grown on sustainable, thriving farms. Oh, this is the video.
Our global food system is facing intensifying pressures. Deadly pests and pathogens in crops and animals, weakened supply chains, and severe weather events caused by climate change are compromising efficiency, production, and profits. But collaboration between producers, researchers, and industry can help the agriculture sector adapt to these challenges. FFAR builds public-private partnerships to develop pioneering solutions to big food and agriculture challenges by convening stakeholders, funding research, and investing in the next generation of food and agriculture scientists. FFAR maximizes taxpayer investment to fund bold agricultural research, advancing production and profitability while protecting the environment. The fate of our future global food supply depends on the research we fund today. Join us, and together we'll go far.
Thank you. I could have told you all that, but sometimes it's just nicer to see it in a visual format. A wonderful video that was developed this year, really highlighting kind of who FFAR is and what we do. So we currently fund research across 7 different challenge areas. These span the gamut of food and agriculture, crops, animals, water, soils, urban food system. We think about and do research on the intersection between agriculture and human health. And we also fund research into climate change and climate smart agriculture. One of the ways that we work is through consortia. FFAR is known for bringing together players across the value chain, sometimes competitors in the same space, to join together and fund research for the common good. And by doing this, we're able to help companies, often it's companies joining us through these consortia, to de-risk their investment and ensure that they can achieve an output that the entire industry or the entire sector across the food and ag value chain needs, but no one company is responsible for funding that research on their own. So through the consortia, we bring different players together. We also invest in the scientific workforce. We know that if we're going to accomplish the objectives that we've set out, that USDA is going to set out, that the research enterprise across the board is aiming to do, we need the right talent developed. And so FFAR has a number of programs, prizes, fellowships that aim to build up that scientific workforce that we need to address the challenges of today and of the future. So FFAR was established in 2014. And as you might imagine, it took a little year or so to figure out how to get started and how to build up a new organization, essentially from scratch, from zero, very quickly hit the ground running. And as you can see, the green bars are the Farm Bill money, the FFAR award portion, and all of our funding is matched by non-federal partners. We have a mandate by Congress to match it 1-to-1, but as you can see, we exceed that greatly. So the red bar here is the matching award portion. And our ability to make grants and the willingness of our partners to co-fund with us has been steadily rising. 22 was our largest grant making year to date, and 2023 is going to surpass that by quite a bit. We're projecting over $65 million in Farm Bill funding and quite a bit more in matching funds out the door this year. So really looking to have that impact through making those targeted research investments with partners across the country and across the world. So where is that money coming from and where is it going? Really pleased to report that our matching funds come from a broad range of partners. The two most significant sources are foundations and industry, and academic organizations do make a notable amount here, but I'm actually pleased to say that over time, our reliance on academic institutions for that match has decreased as we've looked to other funders in the food and ag sector to provide those matching funds. We also have a significant portion from nonprofit and commodity groups. And to me, when I see a commodity group investing their hard-earned research dollars into FAR partnership, that tells me we're on the right track. Yep. Where are the funds going? The majority, 70% have gone to academic and research institutions, but also a fair amount to industry and nonprofit and commodity groups. So I'm also pleased to report that the researchers that are taking part in FAR programs also represent a diverse sector of the research enterprise. Now I'd like to tell you a little about some of the impacts and updates that we've had in the last year. Thrilled to report that today our 2022 impact report has been made public. If you download and look at this report, you'll see that, as I noted, 2022 was our largest grant-making year to date. 68 new grants, totaling 128 million of funds, of which 82 million was leveraged from non-federal sources. So a really strong return on that taxpayer investment by bringing in those additional research investments into the public space. A notable fact, FAR funding can often serve to launch researchers and research areas and strengthen them so that they can attract new and more funding into that space. 92% of FAR grantees were able to secure additional funding from other sources after they secured FAR funding. If you look at our impact report, you'll see actual stories of impact. For example, an organization, Open Team, is developing soil health management tools. We've seen progress on responding to pressing challenges, coffee leaf rust disease in Hawaii, breeding cattle for heat tolerance, and many more. You heard about the Aim for Climate Summit. FAR was thrilled to support USDA in organizing all aspects of that summit. I had the distinct honor of leading a panel of FAR stakeholders, bringing together a farmer, an entrepreneur, and a commodity group representative to talk about how the FAR projects that they work on are contributing to addressing challenges in the food and agriculture space. Another thing that was launched at the Aim for Climate Summit that we are super excited about is the Efficient Fertilizer Consortium. This is going to be focused on on using fertilizers more efficiently, on improving soil fertility, decreasing input costs, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, addressing food security, and overall making agriculture more sustainable. We've all heard about the challenges of fertilizer prices in the recent years, and this is aimed at addressing that. And what happened is we got initial funding from USDA in collaboration with the State Department and have used that funding to leverage significantly more funding. Some of the partners are listed here on the screen: Cotton Inc., Pivot Bio, United Soybean Board, and UK Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. So funding coming in from the United States and from other country governments. And we have several more entities that have indicated that they will be joining the consortium, and we'll be announcing those this fall. So this is an area, reducing emissions in cattle, that FAR has put considerable resources and effort into, and just really thrilled with how partnerships have come together in this space. I mentioned our consortia. The Greener Cattle Initiative is one of those. It brings together private sector players from across the value chain, from animal science companies through commodity organizations and food companies, coming together to solve the pressing problem of how do we reduce emissions from cattle. We were recently joined by the Global Methane Hub, so thrilled to have them on board the Greener Cattle Initiative. And this year, our existing partners have indicated that they will be devoting even more resources to this initiative. We've just announced the first 3 awards that have come out of the Greener Cattle Initiative. University of Illinois, working on how diets and different additives in beef and dairy cattle can affect enteric methane production. University of Madison, Wisconsin, is bringing together a number of different interventions, including genetics, understanding composition and rumen microbes to address this challenge, and Penn State University looking at enteric methane inhibitors and different ways to introduce those inhibitors into cattle. So as I noted, there were additional resources that have just come in, so we are going to be establishing further partnerships to address this issue. And then separately through our Seeding Solutions program, another award to Pennsylvania State University researchers, also looking at different ways to reduce enteric methane emissions in cattle. I talked about our scientific workforce development. We were thrilled this year to launch the first cohort of the FFAR Disruptive Fertilizer Technology Fellows Program. So again, doubling down on issues like how can we make fertilizer use more efficient and sustainable. We launched a great partnership this year with Tuskegee University. We, in fact, established an endowment with them. And with Cliff Bar, they jointly funded this with us. We each put $1 million, and we now have an endowment at Tuskegee University where they will be creating opportunities to really advance organic and sustainable farming practices in the Southeast. So thrilled to see that move forward. And then as I mentioned, our research really spans. We have, biophysical research on crops and animals, but we also have research on how to accelerate adoption of technologies. Why is it that we have sometimes seen challenges in getting new practices and technologies adopted by farmers? So the Action RFA, we put out a call for proposals and have just selected 3 awardees that we will be announcing soon that are looking at how you can promote the adoption of conservation practices in farmers' fields and by landowners, and how to really best support farmers in that adoption so that we can really ensure that the research outputs that are coming out of our research programs are reaching farmers' fields and having their intended impact. And then Ag Mission, I mentioned earlier, is a signature collaboration between FFAR with founding partners McDonald's, PepsiCo, and the Nature Conservancy. And I love that this really brings in players from across those that really are invested in sustainable outcomes for agriculture, like food companies and a conservation organization. And in the last year, they went through a prioritization exercise to really see how can they have the most impact through our climate smart research investments. And these are the 4 priorities that they have collectively agreed to prioritize through their investments, looking at the intersection of climate mitigation and adaptation, looking at some underinvested in areas like agroforestry, pasture and grazing lands, and then bringing that social science research in again. How do you ensure that you can have these technologies get adopted across the value chain? What are some implications of people? Farmers are people, we're all people, right? How does that play into the food and ag sector and adoption and scale up of technologies that can truly have an impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and ensuring that farmers are able to continue farming? So now I'm going to switch tracks. I mentioned to you, I'll give you a sneak preview on our research strategy. We have spent the better part of this year developing new research directions for FFAR. In 2019, we rolled out at the direction of Congress our sustainability strategy for FFAR, and that sort of highlighted how FFAR would work as an organization overall, but it did not yet have an overarching strategy for our research. I mentioned we have our 7 challenge areas that were established, but when I arrived at FFAR about a year ago, I thought the time was right for us to ensure that we are still on the right track. We wanted to speak to stakeholders across the food and ag sector, hear from you, what are the challenges you're facing today? What do you anticipate being a problem in the future? And how can research meet your needs? And so I'll share a little bit about that process now. We started out by thinking about a theory of change. How do you generate impacts through research? We then did the stakeholder input. We have analyzed everything we learned, and we learned a ton. We have pages and pages and pages of just wonderful content that we heard from those across the value chain. And then now we're getting ready to share with you a strategy and move into implementation. So a little bit on the stakeholder input. We received 76 written comments. We had panel expert discussions with 17 experts. And we spoke to over 50 organizations across food and agriculture stakeholders, where we had one-on-one conversations with leadership in these organizations and heard directly from them. What is a challenge for you? What do you need from us? How can research meet your needs? What are some gaps in the research you're not able to get, for example, from other funding agencies? And this is the goal that we have come out with. Our research goal is that we would like to see a U.S. food and agriculture system that supports producers and their communities, sustains the environment, and equitably nourishes our population. This is a lofty goal. This is not something FAR will accomplish on its own. I think most of us in this room are working towards some aspect of this goal, but we want to ensure that all of our research investments are contributing to this goal. So I'm going to walk you through our 4 priorities, but I do want to make a note. This is still a draft strategy at this point. It will be coming out in final form later this year. So I want to share the direction with you. You might see a word change between now and when it's final, but I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to give you a peek into where we are headed. Our first priority will be cultivating thriving production systems. And this is really thinking about the products that are produced, the crops, the animals, the other things that come out of the production system, working with farmers and ensuring that they can maintain profitable enterprises as they are producing the supplies and the products that are needed to feed into the broader value chain, ensuring that they are doing it with fewer inputs in a more sustainable manner, and that we are using less land, less energy, less resources, and ensuring that we are maintaining the productivity that we need for the food and agriculture system and that we need globally. Priority 2 overlaps a bit with priority 1. It's hard to separate, right? It's all a continuum. Sustaining the vibrant agro ecosystems, and really just thinking about crops and animals don't exist on their own. A farmer often isn't just a farmer of soy or pork or swine, but they grow many things and they grow them in a broader ecosystem. And so really thinking about how that whole ecosystem can work sustainably. And the ecosystem goes beyond just the farm and throughout the value chain. How do we make it to be a more sustainable enterprise? How do we produce the knowledge and the tools that we need in order to be more sustainable across the board? Priority 3, bolstering healthy food systems. This is where we start to get into the other ends of the value chain, thinking about the food that people eat. How is it processed? How can it be made more nutritious and meet the health goals? So this is about promoting the availability of nutritious quality foods to diverse populations. It's about improving human health and nutrition outcomes, and it's about improving the overall functioning of the food system. And then our 4th priority is strengthening the scientific workforce. As I said, we need to continue to ensure that we have the talent, that we are bringing diverse people into working in the system and giving them the skills and the tools they need to contribute to the scientific enterprise. And the reason we are doing all this, why are we doing all this? These are the impacts that we seek to achieve through our research. We want to see production intensified, but sustainably intensified. We're not just interested in increasing outputs of crops and animals. We want to see that we can produce those outputs with fewer inputs in a way that is more sustainable and allows the environment to continue sustaining all the many other functions that environment provides. We want to see that increased environmental sustainability coming out of our projects, and we want to see improved human health. So I mentioned the value chain a few times, but sometimes a diagram is helpful to just thinking about how it's, this isn't just about farms and agriculture. This is throughout the value chain, whether it's on the front end, improving the animal breeds, the crop varieties, the tools we need to improve animal welfare, for managing pests and diseases, and for curbing our impact on the environment. But then moving through the value chain, we need to think about sustainable packaging. What are the improved ingredients we need to be healthy? And what are the data we need around food traceability and transparency, for example? And these are just illustrative. this list could go on and on and on, but these are some of the points along the value chain. And then thinking about, as you reach consumers, we have a great demand for alternative proteins. How do we meet that demand? What are the metrics for nutritional quality? How do we understand what consumers want and the choices they make? And what is the research that we can do to help us better inform how we generate products for consumers? And what are some ways to improve food safety, for example? But the value chain it's not just a linear direction. It doesn't stop there. There's a feedback loop all throughout. How can we ensure that we are capturing resources throughout the value chain and adding value to them? How can we get value out of waste recovery through the value chain? So it's really a circular value chain in a way. And then I want to speak a bit about the key drivers. So what I presented to you is quite broad, right? This is an overarching strategy. And so the question is, well, how do you make decisions? How do you prioritize? And these key drivers are really how we're going to get there. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is incredibly important to FFAR. And we know that bringing diverse perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds together into the research enterprise is going to deliver greater impact and better value. So we are going to continue embedding DEI into all of our programming, both internally at FFAR and also externally when we work with partners. Complementarity with federal agencies. We heard from Secretary Vilsack this morning. If you've looked at the USDA department-wide science strategy, it's very complementary to what we're sharing with you today. And so FFAR will continue to be, stay apprised of what federal agencies are investing in, thinking about how can we do something that complements that? What can we do that federal agencies aren't able to do? We can often work very nimbly. And so we can be very responsive to pests and diseases, for example. We work very well with the private sector. So what can we bring to this in terms of ways to form new public-private partnerships? Matching funds, that's obviously something we do. That is part of our DNA, as it were. But we are going to the extent possible, try harder and harder to bring in those matching funds ahead of time so that when we put out a solicitation, when we go out and try to seek researchers to advance the agenda, we have already identified those funds by working with companies, by working with foundations, so that we're not putting the burden on the applicant to go seek their matching funds. Industry collaborations, I talked about our consortia and how we have really been able to bring competitors together, diverse players across the value chain, and we're really going to emphasize that continued partnership with industry going forward. Geographic scope. FFAR works with researchers all over the world, and I think that is 100% appropriate. In order to deliver the best outcomes, we need to tap into the best science globally. But we also know that we want to deliver impact in the United States for the food and agriculture system. And so all of our investments are designed to deliver that impact. Even as we seek to prioritize global challenges within our portfolio, we can deliver impact here and we can deliver impact overseas and be the United States that also really strives to improve production and sustainability of food and agriculture globally. Excellence through competition. We frequently compete our programs. Everything is peer reviewed. I believe strongly that competition is a really important way to bring in new ideas and to diversify your researcher base and to give everyone a chance to participate. And so we will continue to emphasize competition in our programming going forward. Actionable science, translational research. The research enterprise is a continuum from basic research to very applied research. FFAR, I think, does best and will continue to focus on that translational piece where we take what is coming out of the science agencies and we seek to make it applicable and user-driven and something that a farmer can then adopt or a company can then commercialize for a farmer. So we will continue to focus in that translational research space. And then finally, a convergence approach. What I like about this strategy is it brings together our challenge areas and focuses on the collaboration across different sectors. So thinking about that sustainable, that second priority around sustainable agroecosystems, really thinking about the intersections between climate and water and soil as you seek to do research and really advance the sustainability of a system. So we will be looking at ways to bring together disciplines and to bring a convergence approach into our research. I mentioned the research continuum, just kind of showing you a figure here, how we're going to be working mostly in this middle space around taking the findings of the basic science and putting them to productive use, turning knowledge into tools and technologies, right? And then just a few words on implementation. As I noted, our strategy is obviously fairly high level, covering the breadth of what FFAR will do into the coming years, but it will be complemented each year by a planning process where we really take that stakeholder input that we received, which both informed this strategy, but will also inform the specific objectives that we will set out to achieve each year as we design our programs and assess where are gaps, where is additional research needed, what is the latest issue that has risen to the top, what are farmers concerned about today, and design a work plan each year that will bring new research efforts into this space. So looking ahead in the next year, in the coming months, we'll be communicating this research strategy in written form to all of you. We will be continuing to expand our investment in climate research. As you can see, Aim for Climate was a really significant part of our year, and looking to continue to engage with our Aim for Climate partners, and we will be represented at COP28. We will be continuing to grow our scientific workforce development, thrilled to have elevated that as one of our 4 priorities, and continuing to support our existing fellowship programs and designing new opportunities, and really looking to partner with other entities to broadly support bringing new folks into the scientific research enterprise. A big emphasis for us this year as we head into our 10th year is going to be tracking and communicating our impacts. Our grants are coming to fruition now, and we have so much to share about the impact that they are having on our food and agriculture system. And then finally, I think it's important to reiterate our continued commitment to enhancing our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and to ensure that the programs we build are embodying those principles into everything we do. And with that, I look forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Saharah Moon. It's been a joy to work with you on all of this, and exciting times ahead. So now it's time for our public comment period. I'll introduce each speaker in alphabetical order, and when I call your name, if you are in the room or on the line virtually, please provide your comment. First off is Emily Bass with the Breakthrough Institute, and we need a microphone for Emily. Is she in the room?
I am online. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Bass, our Federal Policy Manager for Food and Agriculture here at the Breakthrough Institute. Breakthrough really appreciates FFAR's notable achievements during its short history of operation. These include leveraging partnerships to secure $1.40 for every federal dollar, and ensuring that a large portion of its research, about 40%, results in tools and practices that are rapidly adopted by farmers and industry. As advocates for technological solutions to environmental challenges, we here at Breakthrough particularly commend FFAR's commitment to reducing agriculture's climate footprint, exemplified by the Greener Cattle Initiative, or the GCI. The GCI Research Consortium aims to develop scalable and commercially feasible solutions to cut emissions of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, from cattle. Outside of FFAR, there is really little federal funding for such R&D. Given the scarcity of federal funding in this domain, FFAR's research grants to institutions like Penn State and University of Wisconsin-Madison, matched by major industry contributors, is really commendable. We urge FFAR to build upon and expand the GCI. Current methane measurement tools, mainly designed for researchers, are often costly and require significant experience. But widespread on-farm methane measurement and monitoring is critical for companies, producers, and others to assess how effectively different feeds, additives, and other interventions can cut emissions. Therefore, further public and private sector funding is really needed to support research and development of measurement tools that are not only accurate, but also affordable and user-friendly for producers. In addition, research across diverse geographies is vital given the wide variety of dairy, cow-calf, and feedlot operations across the country. Many methane mitigation efforts will likely have different levels of efficacy in different environments, and we therefore encourage FFAR and its partners to further support long-term, multi-year projects across multiple geographies. We also encourage the GCI to support multidisciplinary projects that integrate social sciences, as many FFAR-funded projects do. As methane cutting products approach market readiness, it is really important to understand producer, consumer, and industry willingness to pay, their opinion of products, and other potential barriers to widespread use. Lastly, we strongly support FFAR's efforts to continue to increase the amount of non-federal matching funding for FFAR's projects. FFAR's efforts have already enabled it to leverage its moderate budget to have an outsized impact, and it's one we look forward to seeing grow. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Emily. That was terrific. Next, we have Chuck Hasselbrook from the National Center for Appropriate Technology. Is Chuck in the room or online?
I'm online.
Go ahead, Chuck.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And first of all, I want to say how much I appreciate FFAR partnering with us and American Farmland Trust to sponsor the convening on biochar research and commercialization. It was really an important convening and developing research plans and action plans to move forward with developing a biochar industry. I want to urge FFAR to invest in closing some of the critical knowledge gaps on biochar. And I say that because of the enormous potential of biochar in addressing climate change. You know, the article Natural Climate Solutions published in the Journal of the National Academy of Sciences found that biochar ranked first among 9 agricultural strategies for potential carbon sequestration. And the unique promise of biochar is that biochar in soil, if it's produced at over 500 degrees, lasts for hundreds to thousands of years, and irrespective of changes in farming practices. And perhaps for that reason, it may not be surprising, but that of all the corporate carbon removal purchases to date, the great majority of all purchases in all sectors have been biochar. And I think that really speaks to its potential. You know, there's a growing body of research on biochar that indicates that biochar can improve soil health and productivity, and critically improve soil water holding capacity so that soils will absorb more heavy downpours and hold them for periods of drought stress. That's particularly important in changing climate. Biochar sequesters carbon for a long time securely. It can reduce nitrous oxide emissions from soil and slow the breakdown of native soil carbon from crop residue and other sources. So it has enormous potential, but in reality, the research results have been inconsistent, and they've been inconsistent because there are many different types of biochar produced from different feedstocks at different temperatures, and it's being applied in varying soil and circumstances. And what is really critical at this point is that we have organized research strategy to sort that all out. A couple of years ago, we were active in bringing together a group of leading soil scientists and biochar researchers to develop a roadmap for biochar research. And one of their key recommendations is that there be established essentially a national research project with up to 20 sites that takes a common set of biochar types and then tests that in different soils and circumstances and does a common set of measurements on their effects on soil health and productivity, as well as their effects on climate. And that kind of large, organized research project that's repeated at multiple locations, we believe has the potential to close the critical knowledge gaps on biochar more quickly and more cost effectively than just continuing to do piecemeal research on biochar. So we urge FFAR to, and I will add that before I go on, I want to say that we believe that the USDA Agricultural Research Service is uniquely positioned to carry on that kind of a large national research project. When you're talking about repeating, essentially duplicating research at multiple sites around the country, ARS, Agricultural Research Service, is unique in its capacity to implement that kind of a research project because of its laboratories all over the country and its scientists all over the country. So we would urge FFAR to invest some funds in ARS to develop a strategy to fund and implement this multi-site, cross-site research on biochar. One other thing that I think ARS is doing really important is that Kristen Tripp with ARS has developed a biochar atlas, and it's really kind of a farmer's tool for looking at their soil and circumstances and finding out the impact of different types of biochar in those soils and circumstances. They've got a good start on it. They're trying to expand the things it covers and expand its geographic scope, and we would also urge FAR to invest in that. Thanks. I appreciate being invited to speak, and I've really appreciated the opportunity to work with FAR over the last couple of years.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chuck. And then we have Anna Rosales from the Institute of Food Technologists, and I believe she is in the room. The mic is coming.
Thank you. I'm Anna Rosales, Senior Director of Government Affairs and Nutrition at the Institute of Food Technologists, or IFT. IFT appreciates the opportunity to provide input on FAR's research programs and strategies. We are a global organization of approximately 12,000 individual members from 95 countries committed to advancing the science of food. We believe that science is essential to ensuring global food supply that is sustainable, safe, nutritious, and accessible to all. IFT commends FAR for their focus on interdisciplinary research and public-private partnerships to address key challenges in food, agriculture, and nutrition. IFT is also pleased to see the focus on nutrition and food science within the Health Agriculture Nexus research vision. We believe that scientific and technical challenges associated with the post-farm gate portion of the food supply are substantial, and they must be addressed to ensure food and nutrition security. This is why we have assembled a Food and Nutrition Security Steering Committee to help identify food science and technology solutions to challenges such as food waste and loss, maintaining nutritional quality through processing, and increasing the use of underutilized and biofortified crops. There are many solutions that food science and technology can provide, as well as many opportunity areas, and we are addressing these through a series of white papers on each topic that can be found on our website. Additionally, other issues in the food supply, such as food safety and quality, often start at the farm level and continue to be a challenge. We encourage FAR to consider this important area in future research, grants, and challenge areas. For example, areas of food safety that would benefit from additional research include food contaminants, both microbial and chemical, reuse of processing water, pesticide and veterinary residues, and nanoparticles within the food supply. FAR may want to consider food safety and resiliency as a future challenge area. IFT stands ready to collaborate with and support the efforts of FAR to take on the world's greatest food and agriculture challenges. We encourage continuing the systems approach that includes all players along the food chain, from farm to fork and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That concludes our public comments, and we're going to move into our question and answer session. That I would like to invite those in the room and online to ask about FAR's priorities, future direction, or any other questions you may have. So let's get started with the questions. A reminder for those in the room that you will need a mic so everyone can hear you online. Thank you.
Nobody else is jumping. Dr. Lawrence Schaefer, wear two hats, one of industry and one of university from the academics. I'm an adjunct with Bowie State University, and we're doing some interesting research. We just recently discovered a new beneficial microbiome strain that the students are going to get a chance to name. As a result of that research, we're also participating currently with NASA research on growing food in space. We have active aquaponic, hydroponic operations at the university. And through that research, we're participating with National Science Foundation and USDA research. So my interest in my company, Schaefer Global Management, is aquaponics. Obviously, we're doing projects internationally as well as here in the US. So I didn't see anything for controlled environment agriculture in any of your presentations. So my interest would be the research in the future that you're going to be dedicating money for. Would there be anything particular that you're interested in controlled environment agriculture?
Thank you. Great question. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to suggest we would move away from controlled environment agriculture. That's actually an area where FFAR has made some significant investments and has exciting research going forward. I would say, if you think about the impacts that we're trying to have, and you think about the key drivers that we have, that's the approach that we're using to prioritize and make decisions. So if controlled environment agriculture, whether it's indoor growing or aquaculture operations, is the way to get there, then yes, it's on the agenda.
Hi, Julie McClure. I'm with Torrey Advisory Group. We're a food and ag consulting firm, and we have clients across the ag space, but several in the ag research space. Thank you so much for the preview of the research refresh results. I guess I had sort of a technical question or logistical question. How do you see the 4 priority areas that you described? I don't necessarily want to say replacing, but working with the 7-ish challenge areas that are currently in existence, and or do you see any subtopics under those priority areas that will be developing over the next several years?
That's a fantastic question. So we have our existing challenge areas. I can look at every challenge area and tell you how it contributes to the strategy. So it's not going away. But what I do see is potentially a natural grouping of some of our challenge areas contributing to those 4 priorities. And I used the example earlier of climate, water, and soil. We have a challenge area on each of those. If you're truly going to have really think about how you would make your overall food and agriculture system more sustainable, sort of even thinking about at the farm level, you need to integrate research on climate, integrate research on water and soil. And so what I see is that we will be working across those challenge areas under these priority themes, and over time moving towards more integration. But as a starting point, internally our teams know this, they already work together, but there's natural groupings there. And as we think about putting out research opportunities, for example, I'm looking for opportunities to co-design RFAs, for example, across those different disciplines.
Hi, I'm Dan Silverstein. I'm a private sector and capital markets advisor. I want to ask you a question about the stage at which FFAR enters the funding process. It's because of a bullet point you had in your presentation, Saharah Moon, which said that more than 90% of your grantees also generate funding from other sources. And it raised a question in my mind that I hadn't really considered before as to how early in the funding cycle FFAR is willing to engage. Are you an investor of first resort? Do you see yourself as de-risking investments, or are you only willing to engage after there's been a proof of concept period? Thanks.
That's a great question. I'll answer it, and I invite Mike or any of our other board members to chime in. But I think the answer is sort of yes to all of the above. We don't only operate in a certain space in the sort of funding value chain, and we're willing to take risks. And so we have worked with startup companies, and I mentioned that we can provide rapid response when there's a new pest or disease on the horizon. We'll provide a grant to maybe try something new, figure out the way you would address something. And often we'll set up researchers to then have that preliminary data through our investment that they would need to then secure a larger USDA award to perhaps develop a longer term sustainable solution to a new pest and disease. So I think the answer is we're flexible and we work at a lot of different points, but if there's another board member who'd like to chime in.
To give a little bit more granularity to your excellent question, FFAR works and partners with National Science Foundation, with USDA, ARS, and NIFA. And based on that, we have certain research advances that we've become aware of. So really where FFAR is unique is it enables a translation of some of these new discoveries and new developments into industry, into agriculture. And as you probably noted from one of the slides that Saharah Moon just presented, translation is a key part of our goal. And so again, the answer is to all of the above. But I think the focus is on the translation piece. And this is why it's so important to have partners, because you want to translate technology to customers, to consumers in the food and the value chain that makes sense and for which there is demand. And so this is where the partnerships come in, because I identify those groups that really want to have these solutions available to them, or at least various possibilities of solutions.
Hello. First I'll say, well, my name is Grace Hassler. I work with BASF on the Public and Government Affairs team. Something I will say is it's been really encouraging to hear about organizations like FFAR that are really trying to partner the public and private sector, because I think those partnerships are where we're really going to make some progress in some of these initiatives that we're looking at. My background, however, is in economics. And so I think something that we run into a lot is especially when you're looking at climate smart practices, how do you either incentivize a premium, or if you're asking corn and soybean farmers in the Midwest to plant something else, how do you give them that market access? I know specifically on the website, there were some organic type projects, but aside from that, is there anything you all are doing as far as helping farmers gain market access to some of these more premium products?
That's a great point, and something we heard over and over again from especially the farmer and commodity groups as we were doing our stakeholder research was, you know, they're receiving this sort of demand through the market in terms of consumers are asking for more sustainably grown foods, reduced climate emissions, and food companies have made commitments and they're passing on that demand, but they're not passing back any incentive with it. And so a lot of that is the policy change that would be needed. And FFAR certainly does do research that is relevant to and can inform policy. But I think, you know, the other place that FFAR can sort of work on the back end or on the bottom end of that is that we can do the research in a way that we're really understanding the economic impact of adopting a technology and trying to think about the bottom line of a farmer. And if you're going to have a farmer adopt something, it needs to be neutral or positive to their balance sheet. And so the research can help do that. And so an opportunity, I think, for FFAR in the coming years is really to work with industry and with those food companies that have made those commitments to fund the research that will either help demonstrate to farmers what the impacts would be of adopting a new technology, or even de-risk those technologies by making ensuring that they can be adopted in a way that will not increase expenses for the farmer, so that they can, you know, cost neutral or cost benefit switch over to new technologies and meet that market demand.
And so I would like to add to that, the value-added products, if you will, are really critical, again, to providing incentives to the value chain. We're very fortunate to have on our board many representatives from different parts of the industry, which educate and our decisions and our directions to help address the very excellent question you have just posed. But it's really important from another aspect, and that is so that the foods are available in an equitable way. And I just heard this morning from one of our distinguished speakers that I think something on the order of 25% of the current cancers, and I think there are, 2 million a year, 25% of those could be prevented by lifelong, of course, appropriate nutrition. And so this is another pathway to get there, and certainly provides an incentive for all of us.
Would also encourage those online to ask questions.
Yeah, thanks. Those of us in person take the microphone first, right in your face. So my name is Gina Kennedy, and I'm with the Alliance of Bioversity and CIAT, which is one of the CGIAR centers. So our mandate is International Agricultural Research. And I'm the Director of Research, Translation, and Impact for the Periodic Table of Foods Initiative, which is a partnership that it has been going together with FFAR very nicely. And so I really appreciated some of the comments that you said, that we're looking for suggestions that serve nature and biodiversity. And also that one of your priorities is to bolster healthy food systems through availability, quality, health, and nutrition. And so I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more on that. You've spoken a lot on the sort of upstream and farmers and production side, but could you speak a little bit more on the consumer, the push-pull in terms of getting people on a healthier track for diets? And then even more specifically, if you could indicate beyond this collaboration we have with the periodic table of foods, if you have any other collaborations that are specifically looking at agricultural biodiversity. Thanks.
About 3 questions.
Yeah. Start.
Yeah, try one at a time.
Thank you for being here. We're thrilled with the collaboration around the periodic table of food initiative. That's a keystone project in our portfolio. And yes, our rationale for elevating as one of our 4 priorities, those healthy food systems, is really wanting to bring more research into the space of ensuring that consumers have access to affordable, nutritious food. So while I can't spell out sort of the research activities that we're going to design, I want to really highlight that that's going to be an area of focus, and thinking about the interplay between agriculture and nutrition and human health is extremely important. And so, there are other federal agencies that have enormous funding in the health space, right? So FFAR's job, I think, is to think about how can we complement NIH, how can we complement other agencies, and how can we really bring research to unlock some of those critical questions around both increasing the availability of nutritious foods, but also research around behavior preferences and what people want to eat, and how can you produce foods that will get eaten. I'm the parent of 2 picky children who, I've been putting vegetables and fruits in front of them their whole life, but that doesn't make them want to eat them. And so something I think about a lot, and I think that we need, there's a lot of lore about how to do that. And I think we need more really good research about how to provide the foods that people want to eat and make it convenient for working families. And this is going to involve the food companies, right? The CPGs, those that interface, the retailers, the interface between the consumer and those in the value chain that are generating the products that go into the food. So there's just so many critical research questions in that space.
From online, yep. Has FFAR considered any programs or RFAs to support greater integration of artificial intelligence into agriculture decision-making?
I think the answer is we are considering it. That's obviously an important area that is on our minds. And as we look to design new research opportunities, that is very much something that we are thinking about. What would that look like? How do we integrate it? How do we take advantage of emerging technologies, including technologies that don't normally sit in the food and agriculture space, but could have tremendous impact on this space?
And it's also, again, will help us develop new programs and make tough decisions, because there's lots of different areas in which FFAR could work. In artificial intelligence, think about it as multivariate statistics, actually. We can look at lots of the data that's being generated and help us make some decisions and provide some framework and guidance. And so in this regard, AI is very important, but it's also at the top of the agenda of our partner agencies, including USDA, who will help us understand how to better use this, and the National Science Foundation, and for that matter, NIH. And so this would be at the interface between food production. We have some especially crop producer on our board as well. How this would be in fact integrated in the value chain to interest both the consumer and the companies that would provide these healthy foods. And last but not least, how to make use of the limited resources of FFAR in order to get the job done. And so I think this is going to be a very exciting area of work. I certainly am very excited about AI myself and my own research, but writ large, it could be a really valuable tool. Great question, by the way. Very, very good question.
We have another one. How is FFAR increasing outreach to minority serving institutions and other underrepresented groups to increase awareness of and make more accessible grant funding?
Thank you. That's a fantastic question. Okay. I was seeing if I could draw on the expert in the room. That's an area that we have some very talented members of our staff. I'm thrilled to say that really devote tremendous amount of time and energy to that question. And as we think, one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in, as I mentioned earlier, how can we ensure that we're not placing the burden of the matching fund requirement solely on the applicant, and how can we bring others to the table to fund the research and even the playing field. Not every researcher at every institution has the same access to industry, for example. And so I think that's one way, by bringing partners who really want to work with us to diversify the food and ag research enterprise and asking them to put money on the table with FAR and ensuring those funds are made available to all researchers. So that's one way. Another way is just really ensuring that we're doing the outreach. And in the last year, our staff have gone to multiple conferences and are really looking for, where are diverse researchers coming? Where can we reach universities that serve historically underrepresented students? And how can we ensure that they are aware that FAR exists and that these funds are available for them to access? And then through our fellowship programs, our workforce development programs, we have several programs that are specifically designed to ensure that broader representation and inclusion across US students, for example.
And another way that this, and again, really excellent question, and one that certainly comes to mind every time one writes a proposal to FAR or we look at these. But one thing to notice was the match ratio that Saharah Moon had summarized just a few moments ago exceeds 1. And that's a good thing, because that allows us to use some of these dollars with the blessing of the sponsors and the contributors to help others where matching is not as easy to obtain and the connections aren't quite there. Also, at the same time, we have a focused effort. In order to reach out, we have several folks in the FAR staff that work for Saharah Moon that are continually reaching out, where we get inquiries of folks from the industry along the value chain who would like to help in FAR's mission. And so hopefully we'll be able to extend this. And certainly it is very critical for the DEI. Many institutions would like to have a contribute cost share, but cannot. And so we are well aware of this. And thanks to Saharah Moon's leadership of some others, I'm looking at one of our development officers, we're trying to change the equation. Although, as everyone knows, it is hard work.
And it is hard to, our value proposition is the ability of FAR to provide seed funding and for bringing in that matching dollar. So it's critical that we have that federal component, and then we can make it additive with our partners to support all those wonderful workforce initiatives.
But what's good for us, and really, again, an excellent question, is workforce development is on the front of everyone's mind for various reasons. And that includes ourselves from the point of view of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and also from the industry that needs to replace and expand and find workers who are passionate about the work in the food and agricultural space and are actually well-trained. And one way to train is through the types of research that FAR supports. And so this also helps us.
We have time for one more question.
Great. How does FAR stay nimble to address new challenges as they arise in the food and agriculture sector?
Great question. We were talking about this morning. How can we ensure that we are staying abreast of scientific developments? And we're actually thinking about different ways of bringing scientific expertise into our organization. We have fantastic advisory committees where we tap into people throughout the food and agriculture value chain, from scientists to farmers. So I think a lot of it is by bringing people and the relevant expertise into FAR's orbit, we can stay abreast and being willing to be flexible and changing and adapting to new priorities. And then another thing I should say is just in terms of how we operate, we're always striving to be more efficient, to be more nimble. We sent out a survey this year to all of our grantees and others that have worked with us and asked them what's working, what's not working. And we got incredible feedback on our grant making process, on our budget templates, on the timelines it takes us to get grants out the door. And we have put that into action already and come out with some changes. And so we remain nimble by staying abreast of science, by learning from our own works about what has worked and what hasn't, and by being willing to learn from others about how we can do better.
And in fact, we have Angela Record, who is our Chief Scientific Officer, helps us in this regard, again, to keep focused so that we can work together with our government agencies. And we have representatives here in the room that have helped us during the board meeting today. They give us, keep us abreast of the very newest discoveries, very, very basic fundamental research. We work closely with industry, and we have industry representatives on the board that make sure that we understand what the problems are that the industry faces, both short-term and long-term. And then last but not least, thanks to the research refresh that Saharah Moon is leading, we will have a plan to address these again as efficiently as we can. And again, thank you for this excellent question. Yes. Yes, so we each year we have a annual prize that is given by the National Academy of Sciences, and we have many different agricultural and other scientists who work on problems that affect agriculture. And for example, yesterday we had a speech or a talk, a lecture, which we found very interesting, in which someone described how they use genomics and phenotyping, that is the genomics expressed into physical forms, in order to determine how to obtain chickens that no longer carry salmonella, which in turn would infect people. And it's a really very fundamental research project. And I just, the problem is when you ask a professor a question, you're good for 50 minutes. So I will cut, I will cut it a little bit short, but we learned a lot about how very, very fundamental research. In this case, I believe is funded by the USDA. Is that correct?
There was
and USDA
he's referring to Dr. Zhao, who was this year's prize winner at UC Davis, and he detailed funding that has come from USDA, USAID, NIFA, and other sources over the years, and this body of work really looking at poultry genomics and its impact on food safety and heat tolerance.
And FAR.
And FAR.
Yes, and FAR.
And so in answer to the question, we didn't realize how far along this research had come, and now it's really a target of discussion to see if we can't help translate this more quickly. This is really critical because some of these avian diseases have caused large flocks of chickens, for example, to be culled, huge economic impact. And similarly, I think this will also apply to certain types of plant diseases.
Thank you all for your very thoughtful questions and for attending the public meeting. If you have other questions about our audacious research, please see our website at Foundation FAR or talk to the many staff and board members in the room. Thank you so much.